Hello to everyone at home and welcome back to another episode of Calming Troubled Waters. And during a time where we may be very troubled, it's always good to know that the water, the giving life that is in water, that is in the presence of water, is with us. So I invite you now to spend some time connecting to that water within you, connecting to the life within you, and connecting to the Spirit of God as we prepare for a phenomenal conversation here, an interfaith dialogue. I have a panel of esteemed guests here with me today, and I'm very excited to get into the conversation with them. And of course, this program is presented by the Samaritan movement in collaboration with Trinity TV, and we're very happy to be bringing it to your home. My name is Darian Narain, and I'll be carrying you all straight through the next hour as we engage in some conversations around how faith and faith traditions really provides hope in times of need, really provides hope in an area and an era of just hopelessness that we're seeing all around, despair that we're seeing all around. And it's really dialogues like this, it's really people's practice, people's connection to their deeper spirituality and to God that could help pull them out of a rut. So that is a good way to start this here, and we're going to enter into the conversation. I'm actually going to allow my panelists to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get right into the dialogue. So maybe I could start on my right and then make my way over to the left-hand side.
So, Monsignor Martin Sergio, Vicar General of the Diocese of Port of Spain, Administrator of the Cathedral. We have been living for the past 8 years in Independence Square, Port of Spain, and also the Roman Catholic Church's representative on the interreligious organization.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with us, Monsignor. Move over to my fantastic guest next to me here.
I am Pastor Ingrid Ryan Ruben. I am pastor at St. Cecilia Spiritual Baptist Church in Faisabad, and I'm also Principal Associate of the Academy of Grace, a Spiritual Baptist School of Theology.
Pastor Ingrid, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to wish you, of course, a very happy Spiritual Baptist Day. I know it passed recently, but we're very happy that you're able to make it and able. I know that you would have had some very great celebrations there as well and connections. Yeah.
We're coming to that. We're coming to that day.
Yeah.
The celebration days on Saturday.
Yeah. So I just want to pass over now to my left-hand side here and allow yourself to introduce.
I'm Dr. Ellis Boris, a member of the Baha'i Faith and representing the Baha'i Faith and the Interreligious Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, of which I'm the president at the moment, serving.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us here, Doctor.
Sure.
Yeah, happy to have you on board as well to the program.
And my name is Father Jerry McGlone. I'm a Jesuit. I'm the head of the Samaritan movement. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, just a short time, originally from the United States. I find this a rather interesting interfaith dialogue because being a Jesuit, you know, this is an ecumenical moment also to be in dialogue with a fellow member of the clergy who's diocesan. So this is ecumenical within ecumenical.
Well, and on that note, we enter right into the conversation immediately. Because I see this as being a very necessary time and an important time to have these types of discussions, especially with so many tensions, so many religious tensions across the globe. Mm-hmm. I believe that it's because we're not having conversations like this, that we're not having exposure like this. And the importance of these conversations are essential as we build a stronger humanity overall. We live in a very pluralistic religious society here in Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore having representation from different faith groups is very important to us. I guess my first question that I would like to throw out into the air is, what are we seeing with regards to religious practice in our country of Trinidad and Tobago right now? Are we seeing people moving more towards religious practice as a form of hope and as a source of hope? Or are we seeing people trying to search for this elsewhere? And how do we get them to come back in to some level of spiritual practice as a form of hope?
Well, I would say there has been a positive shift after the decline that followed the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think all worshiping congregations suffered a significant decline. Some parishes are probably back to normal levels, But we suffered at Cathedral a significant decline of about 40 to 50% of our worshiping congregation. And a significant portion of that congregation is elderly. So that means children would not want and did not allow some of their parents to come back. Some came back and some did not. Some would have died along the way as well. So things really dropped for us significantly after the pandemic when we had just reopened. But things have built back up once again. And as some people have remarked that now those who want to come are the ones who want to be there, as compared with before. You might have had some people who had a foot in, a foot out, and after COVID they decided to leave. But I think the pandemic confronted us in our circumstances and in the depth of our spiritual life. And so those who are coming are the ones who want to come. So we have seen a little rise, not as much as before the pandemic, but we have certainly seen a rise in the number of people coming. And I foresee more people coming back slowly. I think people are searching. They're searching for meaning. They're searching for comfort. They're searching for hope. And one of the ways in which they find that is to turn more deeply to the roots of their religious tradition.
Pastor Ingrid, I want to bring you into this conversation here. What are your thoughts and your takes?
What do I see? I see people, the world, we have a way as human beings, we respond to trauma, we respond to what is happening in the environment. And once the environment begins to interfere negatively with us, we begin to go and look for God again. And as we get comfortable and the world we have all the luxuries that we want, we move away. And we have had a significant shift in religion, in people's connection with religion in these last decades. What has happened to the Catholic Church? We see that the churches are, in fact, to me the biggest sign is what has happened in the Pentecostal churches. That these huge churches have failed, okay, because there are thousands of people. And there was one time when the Catholic churches were filled, and they're no more. Those are important signs for us to take note of because people are becoming less religious. However, in the absence of their connection with God in some way, what we see, it becomes easier for us to be evil. It becomes easier for us to take from people and not think twice. To rob, it becomes easier. And so that what I see, what I feel, and what I see is really what I feel in this particular period, is that there's a big shift taking place. And those of us who are cemented in our religious tradition are holding on tighter. Because I could almost feel a strong breeze coming to blow a lot of stuff down. Today, therefore, I feel that it's important for us as leaders of spiritual groups to help those people who are there to become stronger, because they will become the anchor for those who have moved away, for those who have separated themselves. And so that, to me, what we need to do now, particularly those of us who manage churches, is become a really strong anchor. And so prepare for what is going to come so that we can help people during that period.
So during the troubled waters, we say that people who have their faith and who are strengthening their faith at this point in time, they will serve as the anchor in those troubled waters. So that's what I'm hearing from the contribution here. And therefore, as Monsignor would have said earlier, he spoke about people moving away and shifting and a drop in numbers, but it's really a call to those who are in the church to strengthen that faith, because they will be the ones who will go out and, of course, bring people back to the different faith traditions out there, and bring people back into some religious connectivity. Doctor, I want to bring you into this conversation here. What's your take on what's happening? What's the realities in Trinidad and Tobago right now?
The reality, as I've seen it, is that materialism has affected the thinking of our people. And with a rush for material things, they forget the reality of the living water, who is God. And before the pandemic, there was a surge of persons coming towards religious meeting. The pandemic has suppressed some people. They disappeared. And now there's an influx of people who are coming back, find back their roots, find back their understanding of the importance of God, and is taking up the mantle to stand up for God in time when it is needed. You see, it is important to understand the impact of prayer. When people do not pray, their spiritual life is devastated. Prayer is the food for spiritual growth. And when there is no prayers, people become spiritually dead. And I said at one that Christ said, let the dead bury their dead. That is part of the situation that is existing right now. People are becoming spiritually dead, and although they are dying physically also, a large number of the people have become spiritually disconnected. And therefore we have to work to ensure that the bread of life continues to be fed to them, that the Holy Spirit continue to engulf the situation, to lift mankind out of the morass it has found itself. Because as far as I know, and from the Baha'i faith, we are working towards peace on earth, which we're seeing what the challenges are right now. And people doesn't seem to remember that when it was spoken that there will be peace on earth as it is in heaven, it's not coming like a miracle. We have to work for that. We have to work for it. God doesn't give you anything on a platter. Because when we work for it, our spiritual development takes place at the same time. And therefore, working for peace on earth is an essential part of our thinking in this time.
Working for peace is an essential part of our thinking at this point in time. That the depth behind that, and prayer is the spiritual food. So I see that as being so important, because prayer, once you pray, the spiritual food, of course, brings naturally peace as well, because when everybody is fed.
Yes, it brings an inner peace.
An inner peace.
And if the inner peace is not there, if the war starts inside of us, if there's turbulence and this turbulent waters inside of us, then those waters have to be calmed. If those waters are not calm, we transfer the turbulence onto other people.
Wow. Father Jerry, I've seen some reactions from you here. As a clinical psychologist as well, aside from being a priest, I can imagine that you have both a clinical and spiritual perspective on the realities that have been shared by the other panelists here today.
My first reaction is just the wisdom of all of what's been said, so thank you first and foremost. Just profound wisdom, I think. And I loved what you were saying, Pastor, in the sense of, you're speaking my language as a psychologist, in the sense what trauma does. I think in many ways what we're seeing is the ways in which our brains shut down in the face of trauma, how our bodies shut down, how we get overwhelmed. And therefore, how do we care for ourselves when we're overwhelmed? Well, oftentimes people don't care for themselves. That's the problem. They get involved in alcohol or drugs, or they get involved in other ways to numb the pain of what's going on. And I love that image that you use, Doctor, in the sense of that I can't give what I don't have. If I'm not really working on that inner peace, that inner serenity, that inner way of managing what's happening, then what can I give? As we teach in the Samaritan movement, you can't give from an empty cup. We really have to take the time to pray, as you said, Pastor, to really come back to the rootedness of it, to really listen to the wise elders, in all of our various faith traditions, and sit down and just spend time listening to each other, to create spaces for peace and prayer to occur. That's, that goes a long way to combine the psychological and the spiritual. That, in many ways, what we see in medicine today, what we see in psychology today, is really pointing back to our traditions of all of our faiths represented here. So it's just profoundly, I think, important. So I just appreciate the wisdom of what I've just heard. Yeah.
I wanted to actually ask a perspective here from you as well, because you're not from Trinidad and Tobago.
Sadly.
Just in case anybody, they were mistaken. Now they know.
Well,
Right.
you can tell I'm an old white man from the north, as I keep telling people. I'm an old white man from the north.
But I'm interested to hear your perspective on coming to Trinidad, because you've been here for a few years now, and what you've been seeing with regards to interreligious practice here and respect for religions here as compared to your home country of America. Like, what are some of the key differences that you see, and what are some of the things that you appreciate about Trinidad and Tobago in that regard?
Wow, that's a great question. I never thought about that. I think what I have resonated with in being in Trinidad, first and foremost, is the fact that I always use this line that I fell in love with Trinidad when I was in another island in Anguilla when I first tasted callaloo. So you all, sort of converted me to being a Trini by the first taste of callaloo. So the first thing is appreciate what you have. And that's the other thing of the second insight is I think there's such a depth and such a wonderful depth of spirituality and interconnectedness as having attended some IRO meetings, having presented to the interreligious organization here, I think you have a resource that you often don't tap in each other's traditions. And I think there's a power that you're missing in really looking at each other and supporting each other in that regard. I think what I see is that same lack of support in the United States, where we're not seeing, at least before I left about a year and a half ago, there was a real division amongst the faiths that existed and competition. I've been back recently to the United States, and I see a dramatic shift now occurring in these times of war and conflict, that people have had enough, in many ways, and are simply tired of the chaos. That's what I see. And they're tired of being beaten down and bullied and treated like chattel, in many ways. And so what I see is a rising tide of opposition to the current reality that had not been there a year and a half ago. And that's the only hope I see in this chaos right now. But I think it's really important that religious leaders unite at this time and share each other's resources.
I actually wanted to pinpoint that in terms of the importance of religious leaders uniting. Now, we see sometimes that religious leaders would come together, and there's a level of superficiality with regards to the interaction with different faiths, etc. And that natural curiosity to find out, okay, what is this? What is your faith about? Let me discover a little bit more. Let me find out a little bit more. Let me be educated a little bit more. Is not always there. And it seems to be sometimes that you'll have religious leaders come together and they'll say, okay, we're coming together to do a prayer session together, but then there's tensions that exist between leaders in that space. How do you, and I specifically want to, Pastor Ingrid, sorry for bringing it here to you, but you know that specifically the spiritual Baptist faith in Trinidad and Tobago has faced a lot throughout the last century. I mean, at one point in time it was completely banned. Yeah. So coming out of that and now having to experience spaces where there still seems to be a lack of education and awareness. How do you navigate and deal with those tensions in those spaces?
Well, one of the most important things that we do in whatever we do is to teach. Because in the absence of information, people create stories. And they fill the gaps with whatever they think the gaps should be filled with. But I wanted to make a quick point about one of the challenges we're facing here today is spiritual starvation, People don't understand, not connected with a spiritual self. Okay, that self that makes God real inside of us. And if we continue to create, to build this desert of emptiness, because I think that is what is pushing people away from the church. This particular period, in my estimation, is an opportunity to draw people back to the pond. Because there is a starvation. Okay, there's spiritual starvation. And because people don't have enough, not getting any spiritual food anymore. Because a lot of what we have been doing has been performative. Okay, so that it is, of course, my brothers and sisters in particular, I'm a spiritual Baptist, and there's a lot of that in my faith tradition, a lot of performance. We dress up, we look good, excellent costumes, we song, we pretty, it look good on the television or on the camera. And we saw what happened to my Pentecostal brothers and sisters. There's now a moving away from that, a lot of performance. And somehow I think a lot of that has come from the first church, because there's a lot of performance in inverted commas. Spiritual performance, in that every ritual is a performance. Okay, but not Christianity is our relationship with God is not about, it's not a play, it's not a movie. Okay, it is a moving inside of us. And it is
hold on, pause. I can't let that line pass straight. It is not a movie. It is a moving. Wow.
Yeah, there has to be a shift in here.
Wow.
And so that it is when that shift takes place that we connect. Because connecting with the Holy Spirit is critical to us understanding who we are, okay, and where we stand as human beings. That is what helps us to be able to as a group, understand that there is a God. There is one God who's make all kind of different people, tall, short, white, black, yellow, everybody. He make all from one source. From one source. And when we come to understand that, it becomes easier for us to spend time together and dialogue. But I also want us to recognize that, and you know, Father Sergio referred to my faith tradition and our challenges. You know, just yesterday I was doing a lecture at UB that I do every year. And I remind myself and the people of the actual ordinances and what those things can do to you. And that is why I know people are saying, for example, that why does the UN come and talk about enslavement at this time, after all them long time? Because that poison is still in the well. And so what we get accustomed to is drinking. If you're drinking water that have something in it all the time, it becomes part of who you are. Okay, that's the kind of water I drink. Like people ask me, why don't I buy bottled water? I say I drink the water from my tank. Because my body is going to get accustomed to what comes out of my tank. Okay? And no plastic from that bottle is going to go down into my system. So that my body gets itself ready to deal with that, because it is what I drink. And so in the same way with spiritual food, what we feed people on is going to be demonstrated in how they operate, in how they grow and develop. And we have got to look and see, how are people in my faith tradition developing? Are they getting strong and tall and able to carry weight, the weight of the world and all of that? If they're getting weak, it means that the food we're giving them not nourishing them. And what is part of the nourishment? How do I live with my brother and sister? I can't be vexed with my neighbor who is a Hindu, and I'm a Catholic or I'm a Baptist, and don't want to talk to them. Okay, because that's the environment. That's in the water I have to drink. And if I live here, I have to drink that water. And it helps me to be able, so they invite me to something, I go. I invite them to something. They come, or they come. But because that is how we live. In the absence of that, what we have is war. And we war with our neighbors over nothing. And forget that all of us are children of the same God. Siblings, same God. Different interpretation, but same God.
Please, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice, well put. You see, we have to understand when we are creating that circumstance of distress to people. I was in Ghana, and I looked at all the slave operation that was taken, slaves from here, from that part of the world to this part. It was a disgraceful situation that I experienced and see with my own eyes. And it kind of leaves some indelible mark in me, because it's there, and I know it, because I feel it. So, you know, I pray and ask God for us to, you know, overcome the circumstances that we have faced. And if there's if slave was abolished, slavery, because we found out it's devastating to one section of humanity, I cannot see why we cannot abolish war that is destroying the entire world. So the United Nations has work to do. We should work. It might start small, and I might be just a voice in the wilderness at this point in time. But in time to come, this small voice will resonate into a greater voices, because what war does is just destroys human thinking, human development. You know how long people take to design and build buildings and design and build that, and then it is just devastated in war? We as human beings should evolve to a situation to know and be conscious that war is destructive to all of us. And we should find better ways in which we can deal with our challenges on this planet. The voice is small at the moment, but I hope. Baha'u'llah says, these ruinous wars, this fruitless strife shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come.
Amen. Wow.
Monsignor, I see some movements from you on this side, and I want to bring you into the conversation as well here.
Well, I'd like to trace a little history in the sense of the title of this session, you know, Calming in Troubled Waters. And at least it takes me back to the 1970s when we had troubled waters. And it was also the birth of Caribbean theology, as they say. It was also the birth of the IRO. And so here we have people, as it were, turning to religious leaders, and religious leaders having the awareness that together we have a role in facing the challenge at that time, the socioeconomic challenge, the political challenge, the cultural challenges, and so on. And that's 50 years ago. Out of that, as I said, came this organization on theology in the Caribbean, and it has resuscitated through an organization that Pastor Ingrid and I belong to, the Conference on Theology in the Caribbean today. But it's interesting how that title now interacts with this 21st century session that we are having here. And I think it speaks of the, in spite of alienation of many practitioners to different religions, that here we are again as people of different faiths asking to make a contribution towards the reduction of violence, the reduction of trauma, liberation. Your festival is coming up shortly, and I think that's a good sign. But Pastor Ingrid said something which I think is the enemy of it, and that is, she spoke about performance. And if we look at both, certainly the Gospels and the Old Testament, we see a guarded condemnation of what could really become, you know, performance, ritualism, empty action that's not really backed up by solid spirituality that addresses the concerns of today. And I think when that happens, then people start slipping away from the religious institutions because they do not find them sufficiently relevant. But when we pick up these issues again, and the starting point for picking up the issues is, as she said, a movement of some kind inside of us. Not just performance and action, but something that's deeper. In the Catholic Church today, the word used for that is encounter, that we need to encounter Christ more deeply, we need to encounter the Holy Spirit more deeply, so that real change can begin. And we know all change begins first inside of us, and then we work together to bring about change. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to examine ourselves, to see, as religious leaders, how we ourselves might be somewhat traumatized in these times, become aware of our own trauma. I remember when I took a sabbatical in Berkeley, in California, they had the option to see a therapist. So after a couple of weeks, I decided, okay, I want to see a therapist. And when I went to the therapist smiled and he said, you know, my most difficult clients are priests and nuns because they are so much in the business of helping others, they don't realize sometimes that they also need help. And I think what we are seeing locally, increased violence, increased poverty, unsettled waters, than what we are seeing internationally in Iran, in Palestine, and so on. It must affect us. And we have to know, on one hand, how to deal with that. And when we are able to wrestle and put that in a safe place, then we take up the challenge of dealing with others and seeing how we can encourage that movement Pastor Ingrid is talking about to lead us in a more liberative direction.
I love that. What I'm hearing here is a call to move towards more authenticity within our practice, within our spirituality. And on that note, I believe that we'll go to a short break and we'll be right back with some more conversations in this beautiful interreligious dialogue here, right here on Trinity TV, and presented to you by the Samaritan movement. We'll see you in just a few. Hello to all my good Samaritans out there, and welcome to another Samaritan Minute with myself, Darian Narayan from the Samaritan movement. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about that quiet voice. That voice that you hear inside your head that tells you, I'm not doing enough, I'm failing, I need to do more. That voice is not necessarily the truth. It is just your brain wiring itself to remember your mistakes and forgetting everything that you've endured. In a case or a situation like that, we start to feel that overwhelm coming from those little voices, those quiet voices speaking to you in your head. The best thing you can do is grab a pen and a paper. Just write down everything that you're feeling in that moment. Put the pen to the paper. State, I'm not doing enough. This is how I feel. And then try to break down why you feel that way. You see, by writing out our emotions, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, it helps us to come to a solution. And that is a natural progression. So make sure and have your pen and paper handy. And anytime you have any doubts about yourself, just write it out. Write out the why and write out what you think could be the possible solution. That's just another piece of advice from the Samaritan movement on the Samaritan Minute. And welcome back to Calming Troubled Waters. Our interfaith dialogue here today is one that has taken us through some twists and turns, some very interesting topics emerging out of the waters here in this studio right now. And the living water is clearly flowing with us, since the tenets and the core principles that we're bringing forward seem to be similar across different religious practices. So here we are, and we are seated. And I just want to invite you now into a moment of just brief silence and breathing. I invite you to take a deep breath in, wherever you are, at home, in your office place, on the road. Just take a deep breath in and out. And in and out. One more time in and out. And just allow the living breath, God, the life within us, feel that, be present to that, hear that. What a beautiful experience that life is. Welcome back once again to my panelists here. Happy to have you all on board. Now, just before the break, we were talking about authenticity within religion and religious practice, and that being important to bring people back to the well, bring people back to the place where they could get that spiritual food, where they could get that water that will really carry them forward in life. So my question is now, in terms of what we're seeing so many traumas, we're seeing so many issues within our own society. If we just localize it here to Trinidad and Tobago, unemployment is a massive issue. We're seeing a lot of issues with relationships and marriages and family life. We're seeing a lot of issues with racial tensions, religious tensions as well. There are traumas with violence and crime in our communities and in our spaces. What do you do as religious leaders with your congregations? What do you do to give them hope, to really bring them to a place where they don't feel like if everything is going to be completely destroyed? How do we bring them back to that well, to that spiritual food? What do you do? What are some of your practices? And I just want to open up the conversation there.
Education is essential at this point in time. And education doesn't only mean having a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or you have to be in a conformed place where knowledge is being taught. Educating people how to live a life of honesty, truthfulness, purity of thought and motives is essential. Because if those are not taught, because those will not fall out of the sky, they are taught. We have to learn things. When a person knows about racism, somebody taught him about it. When somebody doesn't know about, how to behave themselves, they have gone astray from some teaching that was given to them. So the simple process of educating our people, letting them understand that there is only one God, that mankind is one. We may be of different color, different hue, different understanding, and different hair, but we are one, coming from the same Creator who has given us that divine knowledge and wisdom to know that we can able to be one in spirit and one in God. And to know that religion is one, because the knowledge of religion comes from one and the same God. And if God teaches a good thing one time, He continues to teach good things. And therefore, we have to take up in ourselves is the humility that is missing. Humility is missing because people are not humble enough to say, listen, let me investigate this, that I could learn something new and understand how Tom is functioning, or how Harry is functioning, or how Mary is doing her work. We have to take time and learn from each other. Understand that your neighbor, if you don't have war inside of you, your neighbor becomes your friend. It is the war that is inside of you makes your neighbor uncomfortable. And therefore, if you train or assist your neighbor with love and understanding, the neighbor will train themselves to be like you. So we have to be examples among ourselves so people can learn from what we're doing. This is not magic. It is natural in this society that if we show people love and love that is pure, unconditional love, I would make a mistake and say, oh, I'm holding it against him because he do this, he do that. We'll have to learn to forgive each other. This is the real world we're dealing with. Learn to forgive your brother and sister and let them understand that you have unconditional love for them.
I know that one of the core tenets of the Baha'i faith is around harmony.
Yes.
And if what I'm hearing, that harmony comes from quelling the war within yourself first.
Yes, exactly.
Essentially, to then be able to quell any wars external to self.
You can't out any war outside of you. If you don't out your war first, you cannot out any other war. You will encourage it. You will inflame it.
Wow.
And the fact remains, we have to see. We have to see when we're going wrong. And you can only see if you know. Do not support wrongdoing. You may leave it and don't say anything because the circumstances in which it is, you might go and put yourself in trouble. But in you, do not support it. And be truthful to yourself. We must be honest. It's the honesty that is the deceit and dishonesty that is abounding our minds and preventing us from coming together. And we're saying it's a superficial gathering. It is a superficial gathering of people sometimes because there some level of deceit exists within. Until we operate from a pure standpoint, purity of mind, purity of motive, that also has its effect to proliferate not only evil, goodness has that ability to permeate the hearts of other people.
Wow.
Profound.
Wow.
Thank you, Doctor.
Pastor, let me bring you into this discussion here because we've been talking about the war within self and the importance of quelling that war within self. But one of the things that we're seeing externally is that there's a war on our children as well, especially with their faith traditions, with their practices. And we're seeing high amounts of anxiety and depression amongst younger and younger children. In the school system, when the Samaritan movement carried out some research, we went to several schools and we spoke with around 47 students, and out of those 47 students, 40% were showing signs of suicidal ideation. Now, I don't only see this as a psychological reality, but also as a spiritual reality that is existing within our community and our societies. What is your take on this war that we're seeing against our children, and what do we have to do to really bring them back to a place of hope and serenity?
I do I work with a school for that do the R writing in school. I wanted to do that when the opportunity came. And I thought that what I was getting was an opportunity to help the young people to understand who we are as a faith tradition. Because I also run a school of theology. And so I was hoping that's what was happening until I got into the school system. Now I am a trained teacher. So I taught in the secondary school system for 12 years. And I was shocked when I got into the school system. What shocked me? What shocked me was that I'm seeing young people whose main focus is how they look. I see that the hair and how it looks is more important than if you have enough all the textbooks in the bag. That the skirt has to be, or the pants has to be on point. The shirt has to be perfectly white. Okay? And a group of young people who I go to, I born and grew in Faisabad. I spent 30 years in living in central Trinidad. And I went back home and I wanted to be able, because my church is in Faisabad, I want to be able to help and make a contribution, because my first teaching appointment was in that school. So I went there and I was shocked at the culture. And what I'm experiencing is a lot of entitlement, that parents are willing to ensure that their children look good when they go to school, because if you don't look good, you can get bullied. And that has become so important that what is happening in the classroom is not anymore important. And I'm seeing a cycle of young people going through our school system that going to end from where I'm seeing, in a place where, like, I asked this group of children, I said, how many of you think you will pass 5 subjects? Most of them didn't put out their hand. Okay? How many of you want to do A-levels? Half of them. That said so much to me. Without them saying, all they did was put their hand and put it up. It's the reality for them is not, their reality is not part of this world. Why am I talking about this? Because the trouble we talk about, this is about troubled waters, right? And those of us who are Christians forget that troubled waters, based on the Bible I know and read, this bring healing. Healing came when the water was troubled. Okay? And so that we are in a place where we need to recognize that we in troubled waters. our children are going to become adults. And so that we are producing in this society a group of adults who are not trained to do anything specific, except to make sure that they find the income so that the shoes could be on point and the hair could be on point. And so that we are in, and the waters are getting deeper and deeper. And we have got to take a closer look at, and I talk in here from the point of view of a pastor. What is happening in the church that I lead has to be about what am I doing with the young people in the church. How am I encouraging them and helping them to understand what education will do for them and for their family, and what it will do particularly for them, how the kind of adult they turn out to be. But my heart is broken. I did not doing IRI this year. One, because I was supposed to have surgery, but I felt a relief. Because I'm seeing a lot of trouble ahead, because I'm not only a teacher, I'm also a pastor, and a spiritual Baptist pastor. I delve a lot into what is spiritual, in that I connect with that. And I'm only seeing a lot of troubled water, but I remind myself when I see that troubled water is cleansing water. And so that while there is troubled water in the world, look at what is happening. There is a stirring up. There is a stirring up that is taking place in the world that is troubling. Okay? And if we're not careful, we might end up like the man who was there for 38 years before he get healing. And so that while we might assume that the troubled water will bring healing, if you can't get any water, you can't get healed. And so it took that man 38 years. But like I see it from a very positive point of view. I see when I talk about that, is that the man cried out and God make a man. Because Jesus was born and he lived his life and then come to heal him. And so sometimes we have to wait, but the only way that it will come to us is if we say that this is who we are. We have sinned and we continue to sin. We hate each other. We war against each other. We split ourselves up and then don't expect consequences. And so that we are living in the consequences, and the consequences are alive today. There is going to be a reckoning. Because after, when I love you and I care for you and I give you everything, I provide all things, all you do is want more. Like the young babies in the school. No matter what their parents give them, it's not enough. Yeah. And the parents are making sure that the give back is they have got to do well in school. And so that, we have troubled waters, but because my God is real, he will make a man, and he make a man 38 years. We might have to wait, but we still have to do what we need to do during that waiting period. And that is find ways, and God is going to help us to find ways to come together and understand there is only one God. Whatever language we use in the world to serve him, it is only have one. And how once we serve him the way we understand to serve him, the waters will become calm. But we have to go through the rough part. Because we have created it. We have created all the waves in the water. We created. We have to surf over that before we could get to the calm waters.
Pastor, what I'm hearing is that in your experience, you're seeing a movement towards high individualism and high segregation during this period as well. But you're seeing this, and of course, during the break as well, we were speaking about this, the importance of community and coming back to community, really reaching out and crossing the borders, etc. And just trying to find out those who we see as the other, how do we then connect with them even further? How do we get people to move beyond just thinking about themselves and caring for themselves? And that image that you said, the children caring only for their image, for how they look, etc., is a form of that individualism, is about me, is about self, and not really seeing the neighbors and the communities that need help. And that's what has resulted in a lot of the troubled waters that you said. But as leaders, we're also called to jump into the troubled waters, and to be able to assist and help. We can't stay away from it or brace it. I really wanted to bring Monsignor into this discussion here in terms of how do we really connect that community? How do we build that community? How do we move away from that level of individualism to a level of really understanding the true tenet of one of the greatest commandments, love thy neighbor as you love thyself?
Yes. Well, I think one way to change the tide, it's a long-term strategy, of course. Dr. Boris spoke about education, and we have the largest number of primary schools among the denominational boards. And I think that is an area in which we need to make an impact, a bigger impact than we are making right now. And I think that change will come by putting in more heart into things. You spoke about the inside. And one of our saints, St. Francis de Sales, said that the heart of education is education of the heart. And when we educate the heart, one thing it teaches us is, while yes, we maintain our distinctiveness and so on, it also helps us to break down barriers, cross boundaries and so on. And the school is a place where you don't have a monolithic population, you have people of different races, religions and so on. And I think our schools, if they follow a certain philosophy of education, rooted in their own spiritualities, I think they signal for us a great hope that society has. Remember, this is not the first time we've been through poverty and violence and trauma. One can say, decades ago we faced the same thing in a different form, greater degree of self-hate and things like that, greater amounts of poverty. But we held on to two things. We held on to our faith and we held on to our religion. We held on to our faith and we held on to our schools. And I think that combination of faith and school can be a source of hope for the future and to help us face the traumas that we are experiencing today. I think what we call the prayer book of the church, which is the Psalms, is a good resource because the Psalms are not hypocritical. The Psalms expose trauma, expose near despair, expose anger, and yet you turn to God and say, pull us out of this, help us. And I think if we can do that in our schools more and more, and really let spirituality be the soul of our education, I think in the long term we will get out of where we are at. In one of my schools, the principal said, Father, sometimes we need other kinds of help. For instance, yes, we are financially challenged, and yes, we may not have the full complement of teachers, but there are other issues. We have children here who have seen either their brother, their cousin, their father shot and so on. And we know we cannot get a psychologist to come into school every week, but in many cases they don't need perhaps that kind of presence, but they need a sort of elder presence in their lives. And this is where the parish now can become more influential, more effective in partnering with the school, so that if you get someone to go in there once a week, let's say, because the teachers say sometimes all they want is a kind of grandfatherly figure, someone they can sit and talk to during break time and things like that, and that will help a long way. I was also very interested when an elder said he wanted to start up the Legion of Mary in one of the schools. So I said, sure, please proceed once the principal is welcome to the idea, and she was. But after some months, I also wanted to track that with respect to their performance in their academics and also in their behavior. And she said on both counts, The children have settled down in terms of their behavior, and they're doing better in their academics as well. So I think this partnering of the parish, the elders, the wisdom figures and so on with the schools more effectively, more comprehensively, and that is part of our plan, it's part of an archdiocesan plan. I think little by little, we don't have short-term solutions. The solutions, I think, lie in the long term, but there are things we can do now to build towards the future, and I think that will certainly give us hope, and it would take away some of the trauma in which our children find themselves at the moment.
Wow. Father Jerry, what?
I think they need to see examples.
They need good examples inside there.
If they don't have that example to, like a mentor, a person who they could look towards guidance, it would be a challenge continuum.
Agreed. Father Jerry, what are you hearing? You've been silent for quite some time.
I've been in awe. So, I mean, I really do mean that. I mean, just the wisdom, and I'm just in awe of each of your insights. I think Monsignor's words and Pastor, your words remind me of how important it is. Much like you had said before, if we practice our faith only in ritualistic ways, external ways, then we're not credible witnesses. And isn't it interesting that, the very students who are so focused on the external, they had to learn that from somebody. They had to model that from somebody. And so to me, I think what you're also suggesting, Monsignor, is what we know in psychological data in medicine too is that though people have been traumatized and there are various levels of violence and abuse that exist in a child's life or in a woman's life or in a man's life, we know that relationships matter and relationships heal. And so just like you were referring to, that if we can get the elders into the schools, if they can be present to the schools, if we get a good teacher who saves a child's life and becomes a good role model, if we get other peers being supportive of that child, if we get other adults involved, if we get hobbies and sports, and the beautiful pan music being the savior of so many children's lives here in Trinidad, Tobago, and support that. As the Samaritan movement says, together we heal, rediscovering community as family. I mean, isn't that what you all grew up in here in Trinidad and Tobago? Isn't that your roots? Isn't that what you want so much in each of your faith communities, is for the community to really model what it believes? And that's what youth today are asking you and I to be and to do, is they're tired of our words. They are tired of what we say. They don't want to listen to what we say. What they want is an example they can imitate. So if we don't model love, if we don't model authenticity, we don't model getting beyond social media and all the externals, then they're going to say, why would we believe you? Why would we believe in your God? And I think to me, it gets to your point of authenticity. I have to be what I say I am. And if we do that, the world can change. I mean, look at where your faith came from. The very area torn apart by violence right now is the birthplace of your faith.
Yes.
Palestine, look at the birthplace of Christianity. Look at the centuries of hatred, the centuries of hatred that still go on, the centuries of unhealed hatred in the enslavement. That we have an opportunity, which I love your image of, it's in the troubled waters we can find hope and healing. It's in the troubled waters where Jesus was there in the boat. He's there with us. Do we believe he's in the troubled waters, is my question. And if we can believe he's in the troubled waters, then there's hope.
Yes, and with hope we also have to have trust.
Amen.
If we have to trust, able to trust each other. Do I trust this? Or the children will ask, I cannot trust that person.
Exactly.
We have to build that trust. For people to learn, they have to have a certain level of comfort in the environment in which they are.
Very true.
So with trust and goodwill, we can able to nurture and grow. We don't give up hope. We must keep hope alive.
Amen.
That we will not only promote bad things, but we must promote good things. And that is that is that sometimes you have to suppress the things that are bad and try to ensure that it is nurtured. Good things are nurtured into the system, that people could have hope. And to have
that's-
hope, we keep hope alive.
And I think that's so important in the sense of what we know neurologically now. If you want to heal trauma, you want to go into these schools. Sometimes just being kind
Yeah.
to someone
Yeah.
literally heals the circuitry of the brain. Just saying thank you and being able to be thankful.
And on that note, I want to say a big thank you to you, the panelists, for being here, for being with us here today, and for really contributing to this discussion. I'm sure that all of those at home really enjoyed the insights that we've shared here, the discussions that we've had, and we've shown something very powerful here, that no matter what side of the fence you may be, wherever you may be, wherever you come from, whatever practice you may have, there's always a place of love that we could come to. And the love is really what exists in that healing waters. So moving from the troubled waters to the healing waters requires love. I thank you for joining us so much here on the Calming Troubled Waters series, and we look forward to having you again in the near future. Thank you.